He's a United States congressman out of central Illinois. Let's welcome in my cousin. It is Congressman Darin LaHood. It's great to see you. Are you safe? You look good.
Well, thanks, Pete. Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm actually got on a flight this morning from DC back to Peoria. I'm at O'Hare Airport right now. But yeah, yesterday was obviously a crazy day. But luckily, I'm safe. My staff has been safe. Thanks to, in big part, to the Capitol Police and law enforcement and everything. But yesterday obviously was a terrible day for our country and democracy. And I'm just glad that that we were safe through it all.
Well, the vote was certified at 3:41. Did you get any sleep or did you just head back to Peoria?
Well, I got about 4 hours of sleep. I got back to my apartment a little after 4. I had to get up today about 8 and got on the flight here. But, that's part of the job. And I'm glad after everything that happened yesterday, Pete, I think it was important for the country and for our system of government and for democracy that we go back into session, that we, do our constitutional duty, which was to certify the Electoral College. And that's what we did.
Well, paint a picture for me, Darin, with the Capitol building being overrun by this mob. How were you evacuated? How did you hear about it? Where were you? Paint a picture for me. What happened?
Yeah, well, as you know, Pete, under the Constitution, we have to take up the Electoral College in a joint session at 1 p.m. Eastern time in the Capitol. So that's what we did. We started that out at 1 o'clock. Vice President Pence was there. We started the process. I was on the House floor for that, which is on the second floor of the Capitol. And obviously, we knew there were protesters outside. So we began that process. We were about a little over an hour and a half into that. And I was standing on the House floor listening to the debate, and we were on the state of Arizona and some of the alleged improprieties regarding voting. And I could actually hear the protesters outside where I was standing on the House floor. And so I got a little concerned then. And so what I did is I actually walked out of the House chamber on the second floor, walked to the east front of the Capitol, and I could see all the protesters at that point. They had broken through the barriers, were running up the steps of the Capitol. And it appeared to me they were going to breach the front doors, which ultimately they did and broke a number of windows there. But these are things that we're not used to seeing. I mean, this is unprecedented to have this happening. And so what I did, as soon as I knew that they were going to eventually breach the doors and come in, and so I raced to the back stairs on the second floor and took 4 floors of stairs down to the bottom of the Capitol, kind of in the bowels of the Capitol. And then there's a tunnel system that takes you over to the yeah, and that's what I did.
What about your staff? Did you immediately contact your staff and your friends and let other congressmen know?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little chaotic because it happened so quickly that there wasn't a lot of planning. But obviously, I ended up making it back to my office, and we were on limited staff just because of COVID. But my press secretary was there, my chief of staff was there, and so we kind of huddled up there, and then we took instruction from the Capitol Police.
And so you're down in the tunnels underneath the Capitol. Where do they take you? Do they take you out of the building? Are you in the building? Where are you?
Yeah, they actually take you through the tunnels over to another building, which is the Rayburn building and the Longworth building. It's a little bit of a walk, but it was determined by the Capitol Police that was the safest area to be, and that nothing had been compromised over there, nothing as of yet. But of course, there was a lot of concern and worry because once they got in on the second floor, that they could make their way throughout the complex into these other buildings. Of course, that never happened.
Now, are you watching on TV? Are you with other people? Who were you with in your room?
Yeah, so I was in my office with my press secretary and chief of staff, and we were watching on TV like everyone else, watching Fox and CNN and MSNBC and of course C-SPAN watching. And there was a lot of it was chaotic, it was confusing, unclear where they were at and kind of who was in charge. So that part was troubling and a bit disturbing. Just to see all that go on, the chaos that we're again not used to. And so, I think people, staff and other people in the buildings were scared and worried because no one knew whether they had guns or they had weapons or they could bring them in and what could occur from there.
What are your thoughts on the president inciting a riot? I mean, we had a riot yesterday. They overtook the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., and a woman was shot dead. It's horrible. It was a horrible day for the United States.
Yeah, I mean, I've publicly said that, this was a terrible and embarrassing day for democracy and for our country, Pete. I never thought I'd see the day where people would storm the Capitol and come in and create violence and people would die. But that's what happened. I think, this is something that we're used to seeing in a third world country or a banana republic, not in the United States of America, not in the kind of the beacon of democracy, which is our U.S. Capitol. But that's what occurred. And so, it's really hard to conceptualize that. But I think it also shows that, our democracy is durable. As tough as this was and is, our democracy is durable. We secured the Capitol, thank God, through great work from law enforcement, and we're able to go back in the House and Senate and do our job. And it took us till 4 a.m, but we did our constitutional duty, which we were obligated to do, was to certify the election and have a debate about it, which we did.
Chuck Schumer says Vice President Pence needs to invoke the 25th Amendment. Is this just posturing by the Democrats, or are we going to see real movement in the next 2 weeks?
Well, listen, we certified the election last night after lots of debate on what happened in the November election. But the vice president did the right thing. He certified the election, even though he had a lot of pressure not to do that. But I think any talk of the 25th Amendment or some of these other things is politics. It's posturing. Listen, we're going to have a new president on January 20th. There's going to be a smooth transition of power. I was glad to see President Trump put out a statement through his spokesman today that they're working on a smooth transition. I think that's positive for the country. So I don't think there's any need to go the route of the 25th Amendment.
You've had conversations with the president. Have you reached out? Have you said anything to him in the last 24 hours?
I have not. I don't think very many people have. As you've seen, there's many people leaving the White House after what occurred yesterday. There's really a lot of concern about what went on, how it happened. You couple that with the 2 Georgia races that went on. There was a lot of pressure on that. We, of course, lost both those races as Republicans. And so I just think that there's a lot of moving parts here. And then you saw the pressure put on the vice president. And nobody has been more loyal to President Trump than Vice President Pence. And to think that he was being pressured to make an unconstitutional decision as the head of the joint session of Congress, I think was disturbing to a lot of members of Congress and others. But listen, I'm confident that over the next 2 weeks, we can keep on that path and roadmap to a smooth transition.
Wow, man. As this unfolded, I mean, we're all just in disbelief. We couldn't believe what happened yesterday. Is President Trump, is he still with it? I mean, you have to think, what is going on in his mind?
Yeah, well, listen, he doesn't like losing, that's for sure. We're seeing that
Nobody
play out.
does.
Yeah, nobody does. But listen, I have 3 boys. My wife and I have 3 boys of our own. Been involved in lots of sports. You have too, Pete. When you lose, as tough as it is, what you teach your kids is, you gotta be a good loser, even as tough as that is, right? It's part of our system and what we've been grown up to. I always say I've learned a lot more from losing elections than ever winning elections. And as tough as that is for President Trump, you got to move on. And for the betterment of our country and what we stand for as a democracy and 235 years of history and what makes us the greatest country in the world is, what we need to be thinking about. And obviously that's what the Congress did early this morning, continue on that map of that path of a smooth transition. So, it's sad to see this play out and to have this indelible mark on history, which it will be, but we got to move on.
You're a former federal prosecutor. These people that broke into the Capitol yesterday, are they going to see jail time?
Well, absolutely. We need to, and I've said this repeatedly, and in the statement I put out yesterday, to the full extent of the law, they need to be prosecuted. We have cameras throughout the Capitol. I know the Capitol Police and other law enforcement agencies, including the FBI, are looking at all the cameras. They're looking at the people to identify them and to make sure they're held accountable. There was approximately about 30 arrests made yesterday. Those folks are being prosecuted there too. I mean, the difficult thing with this too, Pete, is normally when you have there's a lot of questions on why we weren't better prepared, why there wasn't National Guard or further troops at the Capitol. I don't know if you saw today, but it looks like Chuck Schumer fired the Sergeant of Arms for the Senate, who's in charge of security for the Senate. So yes, there will be prosecutions and people need to be held accountable. And I think that'll happen here in the next month or so.
Well, as I'm watching the video yesterday, it looked like there were wooden doors. It reminded me of my grammar school, St. Philomena in Peoria. I mean, the doors, there didn't seem like there was that much security to get in at the Capitol building. I've never been. You tell me.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, the Capitol building is huge. There's a huge perimeter around it. So it's hard, I mean, unless you have massive amounts of force to prevent people from getting near it. And it should be that way. You know, it's got the People's House and the Senate in there. But yeah, clearly they didn't have enough troops. They did have fencing and barriers up, but those were quickly breached. And they actually used them as kind of ladders to climb up on the platform on the west front of the Capitol, which of course is where the inauguration is going to occur at. So it was there's some real questions that have to be answered for that, Pete. One, there was not enough troops there. Two, they got to think about putting up some further barriers around the Capitol when we have events like this that have to occur. And I think you'll see that moving forward. But there's some things that need to be answered too. But those, and a lot of people broke in, Pete, through windows. They ended up smashing through windows, and that allowed a lot of people to break in, at least on the front of the Capitol, not necessarily those big doors that you referenced, but more the windows. You had 30, 40, 50,000 people there yesterday. The vast majority of them were peaceful. They were down on the mall. They didn't come up to the Capitol, but clearly the ones that did need to, we need to take action.
You've been involved in politics or around politics your entire life. Your dad, of course, a congressman. He worked in President Obama's cabinet. He's friends with Joe Biden. You're a congressman out of Peoria. Have you ever seen people so angry when it comes to politics?
Well, we're at a very pivotal point with that. It's palpable. There's no doubt about it. But remember how close this election was. I mean, over 75 million people voted for President Trump. Just a few more voted for President Biden. So, we live in a divided country politically. There's no doubt about it. We've seen, look at the House and Senate. I mean, the Senate's going to be 51-49. The House is going to be a 5-seat difference. I mean, but what makes us the greatest country in the world, Pete, is that we do have a democracy. And as tough as things are, and as angry as we get with politics, we do have to come together. And that's part of the uniqueness of our democracy. We have to work together for the betterment of the country. And I think people expect after elections for us to come together, to try to work together and find a path forward. And I hope that President-elect Biden will look at the numbers and realize the country's divided and try to govern that way. And hopefully that'll be reflected in the new administration.
I know you got to catch your flight back to Peoria, but one last question. Okay, after President Biden takes office, people are angry right now. They want leadership. How do you bring the country together? How do you do that?
Yeah, I think it's tough to do. But listen, remember, Biden served in the Senate for over 35 years. He knows how to get things done. He worked in a bipartisan way as a senator to pass legislation, and he knows you got to work across the aisle. So hopefully he'll focus on that. What I hope he would do, Pete, is look at some issues that bring us together. Obviously, getting through COVID, getting through the pandemic, getting the economy back on track, getting kids back in school. I mean, these are things that unite Republicans and Democrats and Americans. His speech yesterday and a number of his other speeches have been very inclusive and talked about bipartisan and talk about the division in the country. I think that's all good. So again, election's over now, and I'll look for ways that I'm not going to agree with him on everything, obviously, but look for ways that we can collaborate and that I can help my district in the central part of Illinois.
I appreciate your time. Love to your family. It's good to see you.
Hey, great to see you, Pete. Take care. Happy New Year.
Congressman Darin LaHood, everybody.